Welcome to the Hilltop Podcast. I'm Tony Alvarado. I will be your host. This is a pilot podcast series, and this episode is A-4, on what they would call executive in residence at the Bill Munday School of Business. I was also privileged to teach classes in entrepreneurship, management, and business law. Max Kunik, who is our guest today. We are broadcasting and recording from the second floor Digital Media Center at Munday Library, St. Edward's University, Austin, Texas. And we will be with you in conversation for the next half hour or so. And hopefully you, the students, will be following up in your respective courses and academic settings or extracurricular activities. So, Max, are we ready to start?
Let's do it.
Excellent. Well, first of all, why don't you share with us a little bit about who you are in terms of how you define yourself as an entrepreneur, and we will go deeper into your entrepreneurial journey after we start that narrative.
Yeah, so I'm Max Kunik. I'm the founder and CEO, Chief Eating Officer of Wingman Kitchens. We are a co-working kitchen space, and we lease out to all kinds of culinary entrepreneurs, but not to be confused with ghost kitchens. We do not serve any third-party delivery companies.
Excellent. And one of the things, Max, that I think our audience would be interested in hearing about you is, how did you get started? Why did you choose Wingman Kitchens, including the branding, including the industry? And were you passionate about food? Is this something that you maybe inherited from family or friends? So, yeah, how did you get into the space?
It's a great question. I guess I really found my passion for food while I was in college. I helped found the Food Trucks Alliance at St. Edward's, and we would go and try different restaurants and food trucks here and have St. Edward's pay for some of it, which was amazing. And thank you for St. Edward's for supporting that. But really, it goes a lot deeper. I have some family that's just started restaurants and owned hotels and things of that nature. And so I got a little taste of it when I was in high school and did an internship for Uchi. And I hadn't really had any kind of food experience, and I didn't really have a big palate for any kind of out there food. Sushi was not in my palate range at that point. But after that experience, it kind of opened my world. And through college, I kind of teetered with the idea of it. And then I went and worked for Austin Restaurant Week while I was a senior at St. Edward's. From there, I went and worked for Favor and ran their food operations and all the deliveries. And I just kept finding myself in food. And throughout the food journey, I kept saying that there was a huge need for people needing to rent out kitchen space, because it's very expensive to purchase kitchen equipment. It's really expensive to sign a 5-year lease. So I kept seeing it over and over again. And, I wanted to utilize everything that I learned at St. Edward's and wanted to pursue my entrepreneurial journey. And this seemed like the right opportunity where I could use my skills of wanting to help people in the food world by providing a really affordable space, but also continue to be around food, and every once in a while I get to taste really good food from the people that are using our kitchen.
Well, excellent, and thank you for starting us on that journey. So let me take you back. Perhaps your memory banks will record this, but I remember a day in class when you became the most popular student, and I think it's because you brought some samples of some Mexican salsa, and I think it was from Jaime's, which is a restaurant that I believe you may have worked at. So did you come at this as a main hustle or as a side hustle, meaning the Wingman Kitchens journey? Did you start out simply, this would be fun to do, or did you already start doing, well, this is what I'm going to be working in, and that's where I want to go? How did that coalesce?
Yeah, so I worked for Jaime Spanish Village, and they're a salsa and queso company. They sell in Whole Foods and Central Market and a couple other smaller retailers in Austin. And I worked for them for 5 years, and we had our own kitchen space. And kind of the impetus of Wingman Kitchens was we would have people come to our kitchen and ask if they could use it. And we turned down many people, and we didn't advertise it anywhere. And over 3.5 years of seeing it, the light bulb finally went on. It was like, I need to start something that I knew I would leave Jaime's for it. Because starting something where you sign a lease and you have to buy all this equipment and put money into, I needed to make it my full-time thing. So I knew going into opening Wingman Kitchens that it would be my full-time thing, not that it could be a side hustle.
And you just referenced the light bulb moment. And I think students in a class, you're going through the academic texts and assignments, it's kind of hard to see the experiential implementation of ideas and projects. How did you connect the transition between academic learning and maybe some of the extracurricular work? And we could maybe mention the iChallenge business plan competition and the ideas for innovation competition. But how did you make the transition? Was there any relevance? Was there something there that you felt maybe you established the network? For our students, how do they make the connection? How do they make things come together?
Yeah, so for me, what I learned in all of our classes was that financials are the most important part of a plan. And you really have to dive in deep and do your research on what needs to happen in order to open your business and in order for it to be successful. In the pitch competitions that we did here, I always took a lot of pride in showing, well, this is the feasibility study. This is an idea that you need to sell that's going to be, I was never tech focused. So it wasn't, we're going to sell this in 10 years for 100x. It was more, how am I going to make money? And this is the profit margin that we're going to have. So when I was building out all these pro formas and digging into the Excel sheets, that's kind of what I showed. And that's how I most correlate what I learned here at St. Edward's. And, networking is huge. And when I was starting it up, I reached out to David Altunian here. And I think he was the dean at the time.
Right. He was also a professor in entrepreneurship and was very involved in our digital media management program and also in our entrepreneurship program. And you're right, he became associate dean and was also MBA program director. And for many people who don't know David, and that's because you probably have not been on planet Earth, he was an entrepreneur before he became a professor. And so pretty dynamic individual. So he was able to connect some of those dots and basically say, here's what's involved. And did you manage to intersect with any incubator or accelerator such as Capital Factory here in Austin? Or what involvement, if any, did you have with that ecosystem?
Very little in that ecosystem. When I reached out to David, he connected me with a couple of people, and the conversations just kind of went on from there. And we were able to raise the money that we need to raise through those connections. And it was pretty casual. I understand now that that's not how it goes most of the time. But that was the dynamic that we had back in 2018.
And they always say that where you start the business and where you live make a big difference. And obviously you have stayed around Austin, Texas, and this is an innovation cluster. How important has that been for the continuation and maintaining the future of your entrepreneurial journey?
Yeah, I'd say it's paramount. Austin is a city unlike any other city that I've experienced. And people that come here will tell you. And the reason for it is because people are so friendly and willing to help each other. And the examples that I use is every month I go to this networking group called Wake Up CPG. And it's all people that are doing things around CPG, and they have products that they're selling or services that they're selling to people that have products. in grocery stores, or, maybe they have an apparel company or whatever it might be. But everyone's there, and instead of telling you about their idea, they want to know how they can help you. And that's something that's totally different than any other ecosystem, is people want to help you. You can be in the exact same line of business. The 5 other kitchens that are around in Austin, I talk to all of them. They're my friends. We're all going through the same issues, even though we're competing for a lot of the same clients. And I think that's totally different than most other markets in the U.S.
So you've given me food for thought in 2 directions, and let's tackle one, and then we'll follow up with the other. The first one, which is the financials and how important they are, I want to go further into that in just a little bit, and we're talking about funding, which you also referenced. But immediately what I want to look at is, for a student and for a student entrepreneur or someone that we called is in a nascent entrepreneurship stage, it's pretty intimidating to come into an ecosystem, including Austin, without some sort of introduction. So how do you think a student ought to go about making that network contact, using their professors, using extracurricular activities, volunteering in the community? How would you suggest that particular first giant step be bridged? How should a student go about doing that?
Yeah, so whether you're a student or someone that's been out of school for over 10 years now, raising money is daunting. And the easiest way to go about it, and it's still very difficult, is to build those networks. And yes, going out to professors that they might know some people. Or the easiest way to do something is say, hey, this is what I'm trying to do. This is my deck. Do you know anyone that might be interested? And that way, instead of it being a direct ask to that person, if they're interested, they'll let you know. And if not, then they'll make that introduction. But as far as that networking goes, you kind of have to find which niche you're going after and find a group that is networking for it, because it doesn't matter what you're doing. Someone else is already doing it or has the idea for it, and there's a group for it. So for me in food, there's 2 or 3 groups, and I'll try and go to one of them every month. But you can be a lot more aggressive. I just have chosen not to be as aggressive anymore because it's exhausting.
Well, one of the things that I would think is an advantage at St. Edward's University, in addition to being located in Austin, Texas, is the small nature and size of the school and the classes, which enable students to pretty quickly connect with their professors and perhaps other students. So did you also find that to be the case?
I did, yeah. And I still think that's a huge advantage for what this institution has versus other larger institutions, is you can, just like a small business, you can be nimble and kind of pivot and ask certain questions rather than you're in a huge setting and you don't want to ask the wrong question to look
excellent.
Not the smartest.
And now is that second fork, if you will, that I wanted to follow up on. I noticed that Wingman Kitchens is scaling and opening a Houston market. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so we opened in Houston in October of 2022. And we opened there because we saw a huge opportunity, because there aren't a lot of shared kitchen spaces in Houston. And it's I think it's still the 4th largest city in the U.S. And food is a huge part of Houston because it's a huge immigrant city, and the food is incredible there, but they don't necessarily have all the tools there that Austin entrepreneurs have. And one of those is that needs to happen in order to grow your business from your kitchen to a brick and mortar or to be sold in thousands of stores, is that need for a commercial kitchen space. So we kind of took advantage of that opportunity and opened there. And, we thought it would be easier, to be honest with you. But Houston is just a different market with different types of people. People are less trusting. I don't know why that is. I haven't quite figured out the psychology of it. But, now that we've been open for almost 8 months now, we've started to gain the trust of the market, and now we're starting to see that those time investments and hosting events and doing other things, that's starting to pay off because people now understand what we're about and what our brand is, because we have no interest of ripping anyone off.
Right. And it's interesting because this presents sort of an A/B test that you can compare Austin to Houston, and there are already some cultural changes, even though as far as the crow flies, the cities aren't that far apart. How did you prepare for the change? Who did you incorporate into your team to allow you to expand and to serve the Houston market?
Yeah, so when we opened there, I thought that I could be able to operate it remotely and just kind of stop in a couple times a month, knowing that we have cameras there and that we have systems in place if anything goes wrong. But we quickly realized that that was not going to be the case. And so we hired a management team there to really be there, a handful of times a week to do the tours, to make sure everything was operating correctly, to kind of hold the hands of our clients more than we do here, because that's what was needed. The market education still is hard pressed there, and we need to make sure that everyone understands what the needs are and how we can best serve them, and then how to follow all of our policies and procedures so that the kitchen stays top notch.
So there's a tendency, from my experience in talking to startup venture entrepreneurs, that entrepreneurs are not just passionate, not just people who recognize opportunities and obviously have grit and persevere, but they tend to be more micromanagers, that they want to be hands-on, they want to be on top of everything. And as you start scaling, did you have to learn some new lessons to sort of let go a little bit? And yet, from what I hear you say, the Houston experience, you thought it could be done remotely, and then you had to go back in. So how does that work in the mind of an entrepreneur? How do you rationalize when it's too much micro and not enough hands-on? What's the balance?
God, I wish I knew that answer, because it's a constant struggle. I think inherently entrepreneurs are micromanagers. And so how do you let go of certain things is really difficult. And I think for me, it is, once I have the complete trust of the people that I'm working with, which we can go into later on, like working with people and how important people are. But once I have that full trust, it's a lot easier to back off. Because if things still aren't going the way that you think that they should be going, and certain things keep happening, even though you have a team in place, you have to be on top of it, because you can't just let certain things slide, because then they'll continue to happen.
And you probably are a perfect person to ask this question, because you have been in operation prior to the pandemic and then post-pandemic. How have things changed? We hear of supply chain challenges. We hear of labor supply shortages, some nightmare stories out there. What has been the biggest impact on you and Wingman Kitchens and your industry pre-pandemic, post-pandemic?
Yeah, I'd say the biggest thing, not just for my industry, but for food in general, is everything involved has gotten more expensive. So land, rent has gotten more expensive. Labor's gotten more expensive. Ingredients have gotten more expensive. Every piece of equipment has gotten more expensive. The oven, the same exact oven that I bought in 2019, that cost $5,000 is now $8,000. Most equipment has almost doubled in cost. So that's the huge thing that we've seen in our industry, is how expensive stuff is now. And unfortunately, you have to pass on those costs to the people that are renting your space. And we're trying to provide an affordable space, and they have to hire people in order to do what they're trying to do. So everything's gotten more expensive, which is why you're probably seeing that on your menus, on why food's more expensive now.
Good. So let's now get into the nitty-gritty. Max, I've been kind of at a 30,000 foot level, and you've done extremely well giving us the context and perspective. But now let's get down to the day in the life. And if you can share, no pun intended, the secret sauce, what does your typical day look like? We'll continue our Hilltop podcast conversation with Max Kunik in just a moment. What happens in a typical day?
Yeah, so I'll give you my most typical day. Most days aren't the same, but this is the one that happens the most regular. Is on the weekdays, I'll go to the gym at 7 a.m., do an hour workout class that's led by a trainer because I don't want to have to think, and I'm going to let them tell me what to do at that point. I go home, I make myself some breakfast, usually lay on the ground and let the sweat continue to pour out of my body, watch a little TV for about 45 minutes, shower, and then I try by 9 a.m. that I'm by my computer ready to start sending off emails and knocking through my to-do list. So I'm doing emails, and then I'll usually have at least one meeting in the morning, whether it be with my team in Houston or there's other meetings that I have just in general. I'll do a noon lunch. I try and do lunch with people so that I'm leaving my house because I work from my home office. And then I'll try and schedule some afternoon meetings that are at the kitchen. So it'll be a tour there, or I'm meeting someone to tell them about what we're doing and how they could be helpful. And then try and do a happy hour with a friend once or twice a week so that I can get that balance in.
So let me stop you right there. We haven't finished your day yet, so I'm not going to let you
We're
off the hook. But how many people on the team, how many people do you interact with in this most typical day?
How many people do I interact with that are just in my general sphere?
Correct.
At least 5 people a day.
Okay. Sounds good. All right. So you continue. So the rest of your day, what's going on?
Yeah, so I'll do a happy hour and then dinner. If I'm doing dinner at home, it's something very easy. Otherwise, I'm trying out a different restaurant because that's what I love to do.
Yeah, so let me stop you there again because you are a foodie, if I may be so bold to say. What does Max Kunik like to cook? What kind of food is your favorite? And, I'm just curious because obviously, this is your space, but.
Yeah, so that's kind of a trick question for me. So I'm around food all the time, and I love eating food. I do not like cooking any kind of food.
All right.
So, when I'm cooking for myself at home, I'm cooking the most basic things. It's some chicken breast with some rice and some vegetables. Or I'm reheating something that's really easy to make. My main staple is breakfast taco, where I'm just doing eggs, bacon, some avocado, and salsa.
Super. Mm-hmm. All right. And so when does nighttime actually catch up with you and you decide, well, it's been a long enough day, or do we still have some other activities that take place after supper?
Yeah, I try post-dinner, like right around 7 o'clock. I try not to touch work stuff. Inevitably, it'll happen every once in a while, or something pops up and can't wait until the morning. But I try to kind of unplug from work around 7. And then I'll usually throw something on TV, whether it be sports or a show that I'm binge watching.
In the typical day, are there any other things that we would want to mention or anything to complete the narrative?
Yeah, so to complete the narrative is how I finish every day. And every day is I go through my to-do list and I start adding things for the next day. So like I said in the morning, I look at my to-do list to see what all needs to be done, and not putting a to-do list on, whether it be just on a general list or through this app that I use, it makes it so that I don't have to think about it all night. And that's how I'm able to kind of fully disconnect. It's like, oh, I'm going to forget to do this. I'm going to forget to do this. So let's put this on the to-do list so I'm not going to forget it.
Excellent. And in order to answer the proverbial and inevitable questions that you would receive if we were doing this live and we had an audience here of students and others, what's the role of technology to help you through the day? Are there any particular apps that you prefer, whether it's for calendaring? Is there any sort of short circuit that you do that saves you time that you have found wow, this is a real time saver. Anything along those lines that you care to share?
Yeah, so like I was mentioning before, this to-do list, it's called Anydo, and it just reminds me of things that I have to do for the day. I use that. I live by my Gmail, and so my calendar is my Bible. And if you're trying to get me to do something, I'm inevitably going to ask you to send me a calendar invite so that it goes on a calendar. Templates are huge, and I have many templates on all of my emails just because there's generic things that get asked all the time. So I can just click on that template button and utilize that. What else do I do with technology?
Well, you mentioned that we were going to come back to this topic, and that is trust and how to work with other people on your team. How do you manage people? What is the entrepreneurial insider perspective that you can share? Because if there's anything that I hear from alumni and former students is the recurring question or the recurring comment, gosh, I didn't know how difficult it was to work with people. Everybody's got issues and problems, and I'm just trying to get through the day and get to the objective. But people are people. And so sometimes people have bad days, some people not feeling real good, et cetera. And entrepreneurs should not be spared from that inevitable paradigm. So how do you deal with that?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because now I have a whole nother stream of technology that I can talk about. I use ClickUp and Asana for task management. I'm using mostly ClickUp now because it's what the cool kids are using apparently, and it works for me. And that's what we do for all of our task management stuff. And I'm able to assign team members certain tasks and with deadlines. And if I need to attach something that correlates with it, I can do that. And let's see. And we use Slack for all of our communication. So I've taken off. We're not allowed to text each other anymore. It needs to all be on Slack because it's easier to search on it. And that way the whole team's included. And if they need to turn off notifications on Slack, that's fine. But we're all on one team, so there's nothing hidden from any of us at any point.
So we pretty much covered the gamut of what you do, what's involved with Wingman Kitchens, the industry, the background, how you got interested in it, not as a side hustle, but as a main hustle. Do you see yourself ever spinning off or moving out of this space? If you care to mention what has come across your horizons that may be of interest. I know our students are hearing all sorts of AI and chat GPT type of things, and probably many of them, some of them got burned with crypto, but there's always trends. If you remember when you were in college, what are the trends that you see from your perspective now as an entrepreneur that has an established business that is scaling it and that's moving forward?
Yeah, so I mean, AI is here to stay. I haven't quite figured it all out yet, but I keep listening to all these things that are being simplified because of it. I use ChatGPT to write a press release to help me with it, to just give me the base layer of it so that I can go back and edit it. And it's pretty incredible at that. Or even if I'm having a hard time writing an email, I give it the task and then edit what I need to edit from it. It's pretty incredible stuff, and I think you're going to keep seeing things that they're able to automate for you. And so it's going to take away like monotonous jobs like things have been doing forever. It's going to be a huge asset for entrepreneurs and people that are just doing things that give them more time to do things that they like.
So you see the technology as a tool to help you advance your entrepreneurial ventures as opposed to something that, oh my gosh, I got to learn something new. But rather it's a tool, and you figure it out and you figure, how do I integrate it into my business? Is that pretty much it?
Yeah, 100%. I use another tool called Honeybook, and that's how we do all of our onboarding for all of our clients. And so basically someone will send us an email, and then there's automatically things that happen after certain tasks are done on it from the client side. And, you're able to link it up with with Calendly, and so they're scheduling a tour, and there's a tour deposit with it, and all that stuff kind of happens seamlessly without much interaction from me, which saves me like a handful of hours every week. And it makes it easier from their side because they're able to sign documents and stuff online through it. And I think those kinds of tasks is what's going to be automated through AI, because they're able to say, oh, well, this person asked this. This is the automatic response. And it gets smarter and smarter as it learns more and more.
Excellent. Well, before we get into what are the final takeaways and maybe one or two fun questions we can ask you, and obviously we're going to leave our audience with some contact information for you. There's a tendency on my part, because I've known you and had the privilege of working with you and learning from you. You've been guest speakers, are always very important in the academic course load, and you've been very kind and courteous to be a guest speaker more than once. And you also have been a judge in the iChallenge business plan competition and the Ideas for Innovation competition, that I tend to assume that everybody knows Max and exactly what you do. And now I'm going back over my notes and I'm saying, well, I may have left some doubt in our audience. So the doubt is, how do I become a client of Wingman Kitchens? How do I know that I need you? I guess would be another way of saying it. What is your client base? Who are the most likely to be your clients? And how do they find out about you?
Yeah, so for the Wingman Kitchen side, there's a handful of different types that we really specialize in. We have the bakers that are selling in farmers markets, but also want to be selling directly to coffee shops or in some kind of retail where they have to have a license for that and they have to use our kitchen for it. We have CPG folks that are making a product that they also want to sell in retail, and they're looking for our space to start small-scale production. We have people that do meal prep. So they're making meals for families or individuals for a week-long period of time. They start in our kitchen. We have a handful that have started this month that are doing 4 hours a month, and then next month they're just doing R&D this month. Next month they'll actually go into start servicing clients, and they'll start doing 20 to 40 hours a month. We have some caterers that for their large parties, they'll use our kitchen to do all their prep, and so that way when they get on site, they just finish the product. And then there's restaurants that use our space for just pre-training or recipe development.
Wow, you cover the whole gamut then.
We try to, because that's kind of how you stick around through a pandemic, is you diversify your clientele.
Yeah, and again, making a lot of assumptions here, but hopefully our audience would know when you talk about CPG, you're talking about consumer packaged goods. So what does that entail? What is in the CPG space?
So my co-founder is making his product out of our space right now. His company is called Pretty Thai, and they make specialty sauces and spices, usually Asian focused. So he's making his stuff in there. We have another company that is doing dried fruit in our kitchen. We have a milk tea company in our space right now. We have a company that's trying to do an ice cream and get it onto retail shelves. We've had some dog treat and food companies use our space. So it's just the same thing. We can do any kind of consumer packaged goods.
Right. And one of the little known things about Austin is when I started teaching at St. Edward's 12 plus years ago, CPG was not that big in the Austin market. It has really come on very strong, particularly with a number of other companies that have started and use Austin as home base. But is your business, your entrepreneurial venture, involved a lot? Anytime people mention food, I think in terms of government regulation, I think in terms of health and safety. How does that impact you? How do you intersect with that?
So when you're in our kitchen, you're automatically going to be forced to be under those guidelines. So if we're FDA certified. We've registered our kitchen with the FDA. Every time someone comes into our kitchen, they have to go and get a food enterprise permit from the city of Austin. If you're making a product and you're trying to distribute it out, you have to get your food manufacturer's license at our kitchen. So we'll help throughout that process and tell you how you need to fill out these forms so you don't fill them out 5 times. And we try and make that as seamless as possible. And the other thing that we pride ourselves on is just we're here if you need help. And we know a lot about that side of things just because me and Robert have done our own products and brands, and we've made the mistakes. So we try not to let you make those same mistakes.
So it's pretty complex, and you obviously don't leave any stone unturned, because anything along those lines could result in some adverse impact. But let's end our conversation now with the takeaways. Is there anything that you would like to leave with our audience, including things that you may have already mentioned earlier on in our conversation, but that you feel are pretty important? Here are some takeaways, maybe top 2, top 3, maybe more of a summary, but you could include anything that we haven't touched on. What are the things that you want our audience to remember about this conversation, and maybe about you, Max Kunik?
Yeah, so I'd say the big takeaway that I always try and leave with whenever I talk to anyone that's trying to start a business is people are everything. And so the network that you build and the people that you put in it are a reflection of you, and they should be your safeguard in every situation. So I've been lucky enough to have a really good team of people that I've been able to meet throughout the years. St. Edward's being one asset that I'm able to utilize. But continue to meet people and to see how you can work with someone, because trusting people and building that rapport with a network is so huge into growing a business, because doing it on your own is unbelievably difficult. And if you have no one to lean on, you end up in a hole that you just don't want to be in. You need someone to chat it out about.
Excellent. So we still have maybe 1 or 2 more takeaways, but I hear you say the St. Edward's University provided the code of values, if you will, of how to deal with people, how to trust them, how to respect them, how to respect yourself. And that sort of ethical underpinning is taken for granted in many places, but you've come square forward, straight up on it. That's very important.
As important as people are in financials and how you're going to actually grow your business, whenever I see a pitch that's given to me by a friend or an acquaintance, that's always what I'm looking for, is how's this going to make money, and what you're doing in order to achieve that goal. For me, I always say try and stay conservative in all my numbers. And that way you set up, this is the worst case scenario, this is a super realistic scenario, this is best case scenario, and this is like the super best case scenario. And that way you're able to show like this is what the reality should be. Because I think a lot of people try and show this is the best case scenario in all their pitches. But I think a lot of people read through that.
So fundamentally, we're a data-driven decision-making business society. And what I hear you say is know your numbers. Don't let them lie to you or to anyone else, because obviously you're going to need funding. You're going to need to know yourself, whether it's time to shut it down, to pivot, to iterate. And without those numbers, you are just rolling the dice. So it's good to be passionate, but if you're going to have grit, you're going to have data to support the decisions that you're going to have to make. Some of them may be a lot easier, some of them a lot tougher. So numbers, financials, really important. If you can think of an experience, an activity, maybe an event that you participated in that you believe might be humorous, funny, dare I say, perhaps embarrassing, what would that be, Max? Something that not commonly known about you that, hey, this is interesting about our guest.
Oh, wow. This is a big question here.
Yeah, of course. We're trying to embarrass you, Max. We can't make it too easy.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say most of my fun, embarrassing stories are held with my closest friends,
All
and,
right,
and usually,
all right.
but I'll divulge a little bit.
Oh, okay.
So, being the person that I am, I'm a planner, and every year I plan different events and try and include as many of my friends as possible. So one year we went and did a party barge, and our party bus company canceled last minute. And we had to, call all the other bus companies, see who was around. And, that's a stressful thing as you're just trying to plan an event and just have a good time with it. But we found a bus company last minute. And they gave us 2 small buses instead of a big bus. And they got there. They were on time. We did the party barge, had a great time. On the way back, the police pull us over, and I'm thinking, well, libations had been poured, people have been drinking, something's wrong, something on my bus happened that someone did something wrong. Well, it so happened that the bus company that I had hired didn't have the right license to be driving our people, and so that was one of the 2 buses. The guy didn't have the right license to be driving, and so. Of the 100 people we had, and 25 of the people no longer had a bus to be on. So we had to ask the police. And was like, hey, so how do we get these people back? Like, this wasn't our thing. Where are we supposed to go? And we evenly distributed them out on the other buses. We were packed like sardines on there, but we just had a dance party on each of the buses and had a good time with it. But that's kind of the story of entrepreneurship in my life in a nutshell. Is, how do you make the best of a bad situation and just have a good time?
Well, that is funny and very relevant and interesting. Max, I can't thank you enough for sharing your narrative with us today. And I know there will be some people who would like, including myself on occasion, to follow up with you. Where can they contact you?
Yeah, I'd say the easiest place to find me and reach out to me is LinkedIn. Just find me, Max Kunik, and then you'll see that I went to St. Edward's, and there's not another Max Kunik that went to St. Edward's that I'm aware of.
You got it. All right. Well, thank you, Max. And at this point, I am Tony Alvarado. I'm signing off from the Hilltop at St. Edward's University. We have been recording this podcast in the Digital Media Center, which is in the 2nd floor of Munday Library, and St. Edward's University main campus is in Austin, Texas. We hope that you have enjoyed our conversation today as part of the Hilltopodcast pilot project. We hope to see you soon. This is episode A-4. Thank you and see you soon.